Hi, Michael James here. Okay, so this is going to be a slightly different video from usual. I'm going to explain a recent adventure that I had in my aircraft, where basically we tried to get to an airfield and then come back, and things didn't work out. And we ended up getting the train back because, unfortunately, I couldn't make it back to the home airfield. So as a pilot, there's an awful lot of things that resonate with also being a manager, and there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from the aviation industry because of the high threshold of safety that we have. And also, well, there's things like checklists, there's things like making decisions under pressure, there's things like teamwork, communication. All of these principles are really important in the aviation industry. And it all ends up being about the person, the pilot, and the passenger's safety. So we can learn a lot from these situations as managers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain my adventure last week, and then I'm going to make another video following up from this video, so it's not too long. But in that video, I'll explain some of the key lessons that I learned from that adventure and what went wrong, what went right, and how we can apply those at work as managers. Okay, so basically, yep, I have a passion and a hobby, which is flying light aircraft. And the other week, I wanted to fly with a fellow pilot of mine all the way down to an airfield called Fenland. I had to check that then. So we had to fly over to Fenland, which was a fair distance. It was about an hour and a half's flight over there. Now, at this time of year in the UK, the sunlight there isn't many hours of sunlight. We only get so many hours of sunlight. Basically, the sun sets about 4:30 in the afternoon. I need to be on the ground by that point because I'm not rated for night flying. My aircraft is not equipped with night flying. So that's fine. We planned it out, and we realized that we had enough fuel and we had enough daylight to get to our destination and then come back. Now, flying there worked out fine. We actually met another pilot when we got there, and we all ended up in the same situation. We were flying, we were freezing cold. We have a heater in the aircraft, but it was still cold anyway. We got down on the ground, new airfield, nice warm cafe, had a hot drink, had some lunch, met the other pilot, got chatting, and we had a lot of fun chatting to each other. Now, one of the issues here is we lost track of time a little bit. And then we thought, crikey, we need to get back up into the air because we need to get back to our home airfield before the sun sets. So when we came to the aircraft, one of the things that you do is you check the aircraft, make sure that it is fit for the flight. And a big thing that you're going to check is, have you got enough fuel for the flight? Now, as pilots, we have to make sure that we've not only got enough fuel, but we also have enough in reserve. And another thing which I like to do is make sure that I know which airfields are en route, just in case we have any problems. If we have an engine failure or anything like that, we will need to divert to another airfield. So I like to make sure that I know that I have other airfields on the way and which airfields they are. So we looked at the fuel situation, and the thing is, we were a bit low, but we calculated that we should have enough to get back with some in reserves. However, it was cutting it quite close. But what was also quite close was the amount of daylight that we had. But we did our own mental calculations, and we figured out that we should be fine to get back. So what happened was we got up into the air, and then basically we hit a strong headwind. Now, I fly at 90 miles an hour, and the headwind was about 25 to 30 miles an hour coming against the aircraft. So that slowed us right down to about 60 miles an hour ground speed. And we had a heck of a lot of distance to get in what was becoming a short amount of time, because the time was moving on and we needed to get back before sunset. I was keeping a very close eye on the fuel because I knew that we were already in a bit of a tight situation for the fuel, but calculated it should be enough. Now, Unfortunately, sometimes things don't go as planned, especially when you're in the air. We calculated the wind velocity, but we were unprepared for a 30-mile-an-hour headwind, which caught us out. That not only slowed us down, but it meant that we were burning more fuel for the distance that we wanted to go. I was keeping a very close eye on the fuel, and at one point in the flight, when we got about a third the way in, I realized that we were not going to make it back to our home airfield. So all of a sudden, the stress hits. Now it's not panic time, but you know things are not working out. So you've got decisions to do, you've got work to do. And we say when we're flying a plane, the first thing is to aviate, then navigate and communicate. So the first thing is to make sure that the plane's still flying. Don't panic. Make sure you've got time, you've got fuel in the tank. It's not an emergency just yet, but you know that you're going to have to make some decisions. The decision that we had was, which airfield are we going to now land in order to refuel? So we had two options. The first one was a big airfield right near us, definitely had fuel, had lots of facilities, but neither of us had ever flown into it before. So that was a new experience and a lot of mental work to work out what the circuit was to get in there. We had another airfield a bit further on. Now, this one we'd both flown into before. We were familiar with that airfield, and it's a bit closer to home. In case we need to leave the aircraft there overnight, we're a little bit closer. The taxi journey back home is going to be a little bit less expensive. So the question is, do we move? Do we continue and keep flying onwards, or do we go for this nearer airfield here? I decided we'll go into the nearer airfield. Once I'd made the decision, I'm going to have to land and fuel up. I just wanted to get on with it. I didn't want to keep plodding along. And I was also thinking, well, if we end up plodding along, we're going to get lower on fuel and we're going to have less daylight. Things are already starting to get dark. So why delay the decision? Let's just go into this other airfield. Now, it was a little bit panicky at this point. We were a little bit rattled, should we say, but we kept our cool, radioed in, spoke to the air traffic controller in the tower, told them our situation. They were happy for us to come in and land. We did. I worked out the circuit, communicated with them all the way through to make sure I had all the information and I had the correct information, the runway designation, what the circuit height was, etc. If there's anybody else in the circuit. Came in, land, and then they brought the fuel tank to us really quick. They wanted to get us fueled and back up in the air so that we could maybe get on to our next destination. Then came the second decision. Do we now get back up in the air and then get going and try and make it home? Or do we just call it a day and say, you know what, we're down on the ground safe. Yes, we're about an hour's taxi ride away. It's going to be a pain. We're going to have to pick the aircraft up and bring it back another day. Other people, because we share this aircraft, other people are expecting to use the aircraft tomorrow. They won't be able to. It inconveniences not just us, but everybody. So what decision do we make? Initially, we thought, let's get back up in the air. Let's try and push and try and get home. It'll just be better for everybody if we do that. But I was sat there and I was thinking, it's getting dark. We've got 1 hour of daylight left. It's already getting dark. Even in that last hour, it's starting to get rapidly dark. And we're rushing. And I didn't feel comfortable with the rushing. So I made the call. I said, you know what? I don't want to put our life on the line here. I don't want to put myself in more undue stress and pressure. We've already been stressed. Let's not push our luck today. Let's call it a day, stay on the ground. And we just decided we'll hang in the aircraft at that airfield. Now, what ended up happening was we ended up leaving the aircraft there. We met some really nice people. They gave us a lift to the train station. We got the train back to our home city of York, and then I took a taxi there to get my car from the airfield, and the other pilot arranged to get the train back again the next day to pick the aircraft up to bring it back in the morning, first thing in the morning, which meant that the other people that had the aircraft wanted to use the aircraft the next day. Some of the ones in the afternoon could. So it wasn't all that much of an inconvenience. We worked out afterwards that I have made the decision to get back in the air, Well, one, I'd have been rushing. So I'd been rushing my pre-flight checks. Something might have been missed. Something might have gone wrong there. It would have taken a bit of time to taxi down to the runway, which is a little bit far away, and take off. That's going to eat into our time. And I don't think we would have made it back to the home airfield anyway. I would have had to divert again. More stress, more pressure. And I'm still not home. So why bother? And the other thing is, it was getting so dark, it would have made it a lot more difficult. Yes, it would have been fully fueled, but with the daylight dropping, it would have caused more stress in the cockpit. So, why push our luck? So I decided to stay, and it all turned out to be the correct things to do. It was a really interesting experience. And I think we both felt very proud of ourselves for actually making tough decisions, but were the right decisions. And we ended up not risking things. And we are still here today. We still went home to our wives at the end of the day, safe and sound. But this is a really interesting story because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of, when you're constantly moving through the air and you're constantly flying, you can't just pause and stop and chill out. You've got to make decisions. And you're under a lot of stress, and sometimes with the emotion, we don't make the best decisions. So it's always interesting to know how you're going to handle that situation when you're actually in it. And I think there's a lot of management tips and ideas that I can pull out of this story that we can learn from, and then we can apply them for our daily work, managing a team, trying to hit deadlines, be working under pressure, making decisions under pressure, relying on our training, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another video following this. I'll put a link in the description below this video so that you can watch that video, and I will do a bit of a debrief. Basically, it's like a sprint retrospective, trying to pull out the lessons learned here, and I'm going to share those with you, and hopefully you find them really valuable. Okay, I'm Michael James, Udemy instructor for Scrum certifications, AI at work, and career advancement. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.